Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Present.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. 12 present, you have quorum.
A quorum being present, we will dispense with line item 3 and take up the special order of the day. Aldermen from the 14th, you are recognized on the motion to suspend the rules for the purposes of introducing Resolution 149.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move to suspend the rules and introduce Resolution 149.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 10th, that we suspend the rules to introduce Resolution 149. This is a non-debatable motion. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Devote. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye.
Aye.
Alderwoman Cox Antwi. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge.
Aye.
President Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Velazquez. 11 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion for the Alderman from the 14th. Madam Clerk, please place Resolution 149 at the end of the courtesy resolution calendar.
So noted.
And at this time, if Aldermen from the 14th would please approach the dais with your honored guests, Percy Jamala.
Oh, what is this?
This is an anti-fatigue mat. It helps people who
Thank you, Madam President. Madam Clerk, could you read Resolution 149?
Resolution 149, honoring the life, legacy, and lasting impact of Percy Phillips II. Whereas Percy Green II, whereas Percy Green, a native son of St. Louis, Missouri, has dedicated his life to the pursuit of justice, equality, and opportunity for all people, using his voice and actions to challenge systems of oppression. And whereas, as the founding member of the Action Committee to Improve Opportunities for Negroes and an active member of St. Louis chapter of Congress Racial Equality, Percy Green worked tirelessly to dismantle racial barriers in employment and education, organizing peaceful demonstrations and advocating for the inclusion of African Americans in meaningful, well-paying jobs. Whereas in 1964, Percy Green made national headlines when he courageously scaled the Gateway Arch to protest the exclusion of black workers from the federally funded project, an act that not only captured the attention of the nation, but became a landmark moment in the civil rights history of St. Louis. Whereas Percy was appointed as director of the city's Minority Contract Compliance Office, where his fair and thorough process rooted out fraudulent companies who undermined the progress of genuine women and minority companies, bringing integrity to the office. Whereas Percy Green was the plaintiff in the McDonnell Douglas Court versus Green, a landmark Supreme Court case that clarified the protection guarantee under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 by establishing a framework for evaluating claims of employment discrimination using indirect evidence, a framework that remains foundation to civil rights law today and continues to be argued in front of the Supreme Court as recent as March 2025. Whereas Percy Green's activism extends beyond a single era, continuing into his later years as he mentored younger generations to activists, inspiring them to stand up for justice, fairness, and fundamental dignity of every person. Whereas Percy Green's courage, conviction, and compassion left a mark on the city of St. Louis, and his unwavering commitment to equality serves as a beacon of hope and a model for civic engagement. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Aldermen of the city of St. Louis that we pause in our deliberation to honor the extraordinary life, enduring legacy of Percy Green II, a true hero of the civil rights movement and the contemporary political movement, whose courage consistently changes the face of opportunity in St. Louis. We further direct the clerk of this board to spread a copy of this resolution across the minutes of the proceedings and prepare a commemorative copy of this resolution to the end, that it may be presented to those deemed appropriate by the sponsor. Introduced this 7th day of November by the Honorable Rasheen Aldridge, Alderman of the 14th Ward, and the co-sponsors include President Megan Green, Honorable Matt Devotie of the 5th Ward, Daniela Velasquez of the 6th Ward, Alicia Sanye of the 7th Ward, Jamie Cox Antwi of the 8th Ward, Michael Browning of the 9th Ward, Shamim Clark Hubbard of the 10th Ward, Laura Keys of the 11th Ward, and Pamela Boyd of the 13th Ward.
Thank you for that, Madam Clerk, for reading that resolution. And that is just a small snippet of an extremely long resume that this gentleman behind me has. And if we could capture all of it, we'd probably be here from about 1 o'clock just talking about all the historic things that Percy Green has done. You know, it's a saying of give people their flowers while they're here. And I think this is a small token from the Board of Aldermen that we're not giving. I don't call him a legend. He's an icon. He's an icon in our region, but he's an icon across this nation. I first actually met Percy Green. One of the whereas clauses talk about how Percy Green has always supported the next generation of activists, the next generation of disturbers. I would say something else, but we on live TV. And I actually met Percy Green in 2013 with the Fight for 15 movement. And we were starting a process where we was about to do civil disobedience. And Percy has done plenty of civil disobedience, probably got arrested over 100 some times. But he knew the importance of what it looks like to not just get arrested, but of course the news media would love to come out there and see black people getting arrested to talk about a story and being able to use civil disobedience in a way to get a message across. In 2013, as I was part of Fight for 15 and we was taking the steps of getting arrested with civil disobedience, we were scared. We didn't know what to do and didn't even know what civil disobedience was. And Percy was one of the first people that met me and other young folks in the church to talk about the importance of civil disobedience. But his inspiration and his legacy and his mentor for young people didn't stop there. In 2014, when Mike Brown was murdered at the hands of Darren Wilson, Percy Green again was there teaching us young folks of what it means to be safe out in the streets, teaching us different tactics in OBS, in the I wouldn't say basement, but in the entrance of OBS on ways to make sure that the strategies that we use are being effective. Percy Green has continued to fight for economic justice, especially uplifting black men who wasn't getting the proper jobs. As we approach 250 years of St. Louis celebrating its birthday, we also should celebrate 60 years of Percy Green when him and others climbed the arch to demand that there was fair jobs when it comes to people that look like me and my colleagues that are up. And to climb the arch is no small task at all. But that speaks to the testament of Percy Green constantly putting his body on the line. Right now, there's a PBS documentary out that I encourage everybody to go look at. I watched it 2 weeks in my living room, and it inspired me to feel like that I need to do more. And in that documentary, you learn about so much and all the work that Percy has done, the different actions that he has done over the several years, the strategic ways of using items to get people's attention, that I would say the least. But when we have an icon like Percy Green, as we said, you know, he has a case that went all the way up to Supreme Court and actually one that talks about discrimination of people of color and getting fair jobs. You don't see that in the St. Louis region anymore. And I just want to, thank Percy Green for all that he has done, that all that he continues to do. And I don't think we understand the gratitude and the level of weight of the individual that we have behind us that is still here with us. And we need to, especially as a young person, take all that knowledge that Percy Green has to be able to continue to use it to move our city forward. So to Percy Green, I just want to say thank you for not only being an icon, for not only changing laws and rules and making it more fair for black men like myself to have fair jobs, but thank you, more importantly, for being a mentor not just to me, but so many other young people that's in this movement and still in this movement trying to find justice. You're the one who broke the glass ceiling that made this fight not as hard for us. And thank you is not even enough, but I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you've done for this region, all that you've done for St. Louis, and all that you've done for young black people like myself. So thank you.
Thank you, St. Louis Board of Aldermen. Thank you very much. With such a resume, I don't have a whole lot more to say, So whoever prepared that, they stole the thunder from me, whatnot. But the board, you have an awful lot of work to do, so I won't delay by telling you, some of the things that I would like to share with you. But without any further ado, let me just say thank you, and carry on.
I think I would not be remiss in saying that no, thank you for all of the work that you have done. I mean, you, as Alderman from the 14th said, you truly are an icon and someone that so many of us have looked up to for so many years. And I appreciate the moment I got involved in politics and the Ferguson uprising was happening, you reached out, right away. And I remember sitting at Julia Davis and having some conversation. And yes, and I appreciate that. The fact that you would take the time to see, this young person get into the office in the middle of, an uprising and a movement, and say, you know what, let's sit down and have some conversations. Like, you'll never know how much that meant to me. So, thank you, Alderman I'll do fourth and then third.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I just want to echo the sentiments of the Alderman from the 14th. Mr. Green, thank you for everything you've done. And from a man who doesn't like being above the second rung on a ladder, climbing the arch is just wild. So I'm glad that I have the opportunity to say that to you just in person. And with that, I would move that we move this resolution forward and bank.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 4th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 10th, that we make resolution number 149 in bank. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That means that every single member of the Board of Aldermen has now signed on as a sponsor to the resolution. Any further discussion? Seeing none, then I would ask us all to join on the steps over here, if we could all get a picture before we conclude. Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized on the motion to adopt the courtesy resolution consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we adopt the courtesy resolutions consent calendar.
Moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we adopt the courtesy resolution consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? Alderwoman from the 11th. You have no microphone.
You ain't got no mic.
Oh, we're going to go freestyle. I'm going to walk with the mic. Here we go. So this morning, we are so happy to have joining us SLU Policy Pods members. And as I call your name, please stand. And I'm going to ask in advance for your forgiveness if I mispronounce your name, as I only speak two languages, English and bad English. So Azriel Garcia, Skylar Lanus, Grace Vasher, Emmett Patel, Zachary Geller, Sabrina Bucario, Miriam Quasinar, Arib Hassan, Atish Kush Chandra, Juthan Kal R. Apu. Close enough? Thank you. Rudra Kasara, Rangu Penuganda. How'd I do? Okay. Just a few more. Shrija Bodu. Was that really bad? I did okay? Okay. And then Rachel, Mara, Libby, Jalen, and of course, please stand up, Jessica Trout, who is also wearing red today. On behalf of the Board of Aldermen, thank you all for joining us. We look forward to many more visits.
Alderman from the 14th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. As my honored guest today, I would like to have the Alderwoman from the Elevator 11th that did, I think, really exceptional job on those introductions, as well as I would like to have the Not Another Nickel campaign, who is up in the gallery. I also would like to have Unite Here, who's here today with us. And I also would love to have as my honored guest, Miss Mama Jamala Rogers, who is also an icon in this region. You see, they say behind, but really it's in front or side. Every strong black man is a stronger black woman. And the work that you have done also for this region, the work that you have done to also inspire other young folks like myself is greatly appreciated. So I want to thank Mama Jamala also and give her flowers while she's here, and have all these wonderful people today as my honor guests. Thank you guys for being here.
Alderwoman from the 10th.
I echo all of the honored guests, and I could go on. So it's like family. Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. But today I want to have as my honored guest, last week I was late because I was on a call helping with a constituent that had been unexpectedly displaced that day and had to move out of an apartment that day due to tornado damage, right? And so today, for my honored guest, I want to have Miss Annalise Stover, the St. Louis Area Agency on Aging, who immediately, her and her staff, answered the call. The building management, who immediately answered the call and helped us to place this constituent that night, the next night, in preparation for now. My third person I want to thank is Peter and Paul. and Peter and Paul for now housing the constituents, continuing to housing the constituents on the dedicated space they made on the 7th floor. Just want to echo and uplift, since we'll be discussing it today, that people are answering the call. People have the access, people have the heart, and people have the resources, and what we should do is empower and build capacity with them, the people that are already doing this work on the ground, as we move into this season and deal with our now elevated, unhoused neighbors. Thank you.
Alderwoman from the 11th.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I just had to get back up when I heard the Alderwoman of the 10th Ward say Annalise Stover. Just last night, I had one of my constituents, 94 years old, whose mind is still sharp. And he called me last night. He too has been displaced by the storm. I immediately texted Annalisa after dark, and she responded immediately. I am so proud of the work that she and her team have done. If you all recall, when we had the Heritage House pipes to burst and we had 178 senior citizens, at the helm was Annalise Stover. And she is a powerhouse unto herself. And I'm glad to know her, and our city is better because she works with us. Absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely. Alderwoman from the 7th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I would like to have, in addition to the special guest named so far, the employees at Caldy's Coffee that are in the process of unionizing. We have some folks from the union community and employees in our gallery today. So I just want to give a big shout out to you all. Thank you.
Any further introduction of honored guests? Any further introduction of honored guests? Seeing none, Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized on the approval minutes from Friday, October 31st, 2025.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move we approve the minutes from Friday, October 7th. I'm sorry.
First.
October 31st. Did I forget Halloween 2025?
Okay. It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th. We approve minutes from Friday, October 1st, 2025. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in A, B, C, and D of the agenda and has been placed in the Google Drive for your review. Dear members of the board, I have the pleasure to submit the following individuals for reappointment to the Mental Health Board: the reappointment of Caroline Jackson, the reappointment of Donna Schmidt, and the appointment of Brian Phillips. I respectfully request your approval of these appointments. Sincerely, Kara Spencer, Mayor.
Alderwoman from the 12th, you are recognized on Mayor Spencer's appointments to the Mental Health Board.
Madam President, members of the board, first I have a point of information. Am I going to talk to each appointment or just the one from the 12th ward?
I think
I don't want to step on toes.
Go ahead and do all of them. As the most senior alderperson whose constituent is listed, okay, we put you in charge of it.
I just didn't want to do them. Well, as I always ask, since this is a citywide board, I would ask that these appointments be sent to the appropriate committee.
That would probably be the Health and Human Development Committee.
That would be fine, Madam President.
All right. There has been. You want to make a motion?
I move that they be moved to the appropriate committee, which is the Health and Human.
Is there a second? Second. It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 12th. There was a lot of seconds there. I'm going to say Alderwoman from the 8th, that we approve, that we send Mayor Spencer's appointments to the Mental Health Board, to the Health and Human Development Committee. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
That's the extent of report of city officials.
Does anyone wish to take any bills or resolutions off of any of our informal calendar? Anyone wish to take any bills or resolutions off of any of our informal calendar? Seeing none, first reading of board bills.
Board Bill 96, sponsored by Alderwoman Cox Antwi, an ordinance directing the Director of Streets to establish the direction of Marine Avenue as a one-way street southbound from 3600 block to the 3700 block. Board Bill 97, sponsored by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, an ordinance authorizing the honorary street name Kim Kimberly's Way pursuant to ordinance number 68937, which shall begin at the intersection of Deer Street and run north on Deer Street to the intersection of Martin Luther King Boulevard. Board Bill 98, sponsored by Alderwoman Keys, an ordinance recommended by the Treasurer of the City of St. Louis in his capacity as Supervisor of Parking Meters, authorizing and directing the city, acting through the Treasurer of the City in his capacity as Supervisor of Parking Meters, to issue revenue bonds in an aggregated principal amount not to exceed $5 million, establishing the term of sale of such bonds, appointing a trustee, approving and authorizing the preparation, execution, and delivery of necessary appropriate documents and actions, authorizing the reimbursement of certain amounts previously expended on the project to be financed with proceeds of the bonds containing a severability clause. That's the extent of first reading of board bills.
Reference to Committee of Board Bills.
To Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee, Board Bill 96 and 97. To the Budget Committee, Board Bill 98. That's the extent of reference to Committee of Board Bills.
Second reading and report of standing committees.
The following board bills were reported out of HUD's Committee with the due pass recommendation. Board Bill 55, sponsored by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderwoman Sanier, Alderman Cone, Alderman Browning, Alderwoman Keys, and Alderman Aldridge. An ordinance approving a redevelopment plan dated January the 28th, 2025 for the 5105 Cabinet Avenue in the City of St. Louis. Board Bill 58, sponsored by Alderwoman Sanier, Alderman Cone, Alderman Browning, Alderwoman Keys, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, and Alderman Aldridge. An ordinance approving a redevelopment plan dated November 14, 2023 for the Benton Park West, Fox Park, and Tower Grove East scatter sites in the City of St. Louis. The following board bills were reported out of Budget Committee with the due pass recommendation. Board Bill 93, sponsored by Alderman Aldridge, Mayor Spencer, President Green, Alderwoman Sanier, Alderwoman Keys, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderman Browning, and Alderman Devoti. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing appropriation in a sum of $1 million of the RAM Settlement Fund for the deposit into the Impacted Tenants Fund as authorized by Ordinance 71840, revised by Ordinance number 72002, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause. Board Bill 94, sponsored by Alderwoman Sanier, Mayor Spencer, President Green, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderman Aldridge, Alderwoman Keys, Alderman Devoti, and Alderman Browning. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment appropriating a sum of $3,365,535.05 of the RAM Settlement Fund for the purpose of supporting winter shelters needs for unhoused residents, authorizing and directing the Director of Department of Human Services to execute a purchase against existing contracts as may be necessary to expend funds containing a severability and emergency clause. Board Bill 95, sponsored by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Mayor Spencer, President Green, Alderwoman Keys, Alderwoman Sanier, Alderman Aldridge, Alderman Devoti, and Alderman Browning. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment appropriating a sum of $9,350,000 of a one-time unreserved general operating reserve funds for deposit into the Tornado Relief and Recovery Fund for the purpose of supporting winter-related emergency shelter and additional tornado disaster relief to support housing of residents impacted by the May 16, 2025 tornado containing a severability and an emergency clause. That's the extent of second reading report of standing committees.
Alderman from the 14th, you are recognized on the motion to suspend the rules for the purposes of moving Board Bills 93, 94, and 95 from second reading to the regular perfection calendar.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I make a motion we suspend the rules for Board Bill 93, 94, and 95 to the regular perfection calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we suspend the rules for the purposes of moving Bills 93, 94, and 95 from second reading to the regular perfection calendar. This is a non-debatable motion. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Aye. Alderman Orion. Alderman Devote. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderwoman Cox Antwi. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Narayan. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd. 12 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the Alderman from the 14th. If you could please place Board Bills 93, 94, 95 at the end of the regular perfection calendar.
So noted.
Board Bills for perfection consent.
Board Bill 84, sponsored by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderwoman Sanye, Alderman Browning, and Alderman Aldridge. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment authorizing the mayor to submit a 2026 annual action plan to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, authorizing the mayor and the comptroller to enter into and execute agreements with HUD for the receipt of the 2026 Community Development Block Grant, Community Development Block Grant, Disaster Recovery, Home Investment, Emergency Solutions Grant, Housing Opportunities for Persons with AIDS, authorizing the directors of the Community Development Administration, Department of Human Services, and the Department of Health to execute contracts as may be necessary to expend funds containing the severability and emergency clause. Board Bill 13, sponsored by Alderwoman Sanye, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 58239, approved February the 19th, 1981, which previously vacated the east-west alley located between South Vincent and Park Avenue on a 2700 block, City Block 2150. This ordinance restores all public surface right-of-ways for vehicle, equestrian, and pedestrian travel to the City of St. Louis pertaining to this tract. Board Bill 75, sponsored by Alderwoman Sanye, an ordinance establishing a four-way stop site at the intersection of Cherokee Street, Virginia Avenue, and the Benton West Park and Gravois Park neighborhoods in the 7th Ward to regulate traffic traveling in all directions, containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 85, sponsored by Alderwoman Sanye, pursuant to ordinance number 70333, as amended by ordinance number 71394, an ordinance directing the Director of Streets to install speed humps to calm the flow of traffic on various blocks throughout the 7th Ward. That's the extent of Board Bills for perfection consent calendar.
Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized on the motion to adopt the Board Bills for the perfection consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we adopt the board bills for perfection consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 14th, that we adopt the Board Bills for the perfection consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Board Bills for perfection.
Board Bill 93, sponsored by Alderman Aldridge, Mayor Spencer, President Green, Alderwoman Sanye, Alderwoman Keys, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderman Browning, and Alderman Devote. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, authorizing and directing appropriation in a total amount of $1 million of the RAM settlement funds for deposit into the impacted tenant funds as authorized by ordinance 71840, revised by ordinance number 72002, containing a severability clause and an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 14th, you're recognized on the perfection of Board Bill 93.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move to perfect Board Bill 93.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we perfect Board Bill 93. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Board Bill 93 is appropriating $1 million from the RAM's interest money going directly to the Impacted Tenants Fund. I want to thank Alderman Browning, Alderman Devote, Alderwoman Velazquez, and Alderwoman Sanye. For months ago during the Budget Committee, we actually made an amendment to move $1 million of reserves to Impacted Tenants Fund. And there with negotiations between the Budget Committee and the President's Office and the Mayor's Office and Comptroller and ENA, we decided to use the $30 million that was going to come out of RAM's money for Impact Attendance Fund. During that process, there was a lot of moving pieces. FEMA was in. We didn't want to duplicate services, so that kind of commitment fell off a little bit. But I want to appreciate the mayor's office for standing steadfast in that commitment. And what we're doing is moving, again, $1 million from the interest directly to Impact Attendance Fund. During the committee, Alderman Browning brought up, I think, a really good question. I think that's important for the public of where is this program standing right now. So currently the program is not set up. We have been working with DHS. We have been working with Employment Connection, who will be the vendor, to get this program stood up and ready to go in the next 2 weeks. There was some delay of it as FEMA was in. We didn't want to duplicate services, so that kind of slowed down the program of standing up this program. But we have a strong commitment from DHS, and they was on the phone with the vendor that we're going to be rolling this program out in the next 2 weeks. We understand that as people in the impacted area, but honestly this passed before that we want to keep people in the city of St. Louis, and some folks may need some relocations and assistance. And this fund is to help with that relocations of assistance for them to be able to relocate to a different location within the city of St. Louis. I also want to thank the activist groups or advocate groups and organizers who have continued to hold our feet to the fire to make sure this program, and as we move forward, the Right to Counsel program is also fully funded. And with that, Madam President, I would open up for any questions from my colleagues.
Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 8th. Try turning it off and back on.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I would just like to thank the Budget Committee and echo the Alderman from the 14th efforts to thank all the people that have been working to get this forward. I truly think these dollars are highly necessary, and I know that many public have been advocating for this for a long time. So with that, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that.
So noted.
Alderwoman from the 7th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I wanted to echo my gratitude to Alderman Aldridge, as well as the rest of the Budget Committee, as well as the Mayor's Office, and also just really put on record that I hope if folks don't have a chance to watch the Budget Committee, if you're curious about, I've gotten a lot of questions, what's been the holdup, what's the issues. Dr. Pearson, who's the director of the Department of Human Services, talked pretty clearly about some of the challenges of standing the program up, and I wanted to lift that up because I know we just saw a pay study that came out. I know that there are being some moves made to pay employees, and I certainly hope that the Department of Human Services will benefit from some of these funds. I'm a big fan of the Impact Attendance Fund, the Right to Counsel Fund, but I think departments need capacity, and especially staffing capacity, in order to support these programs properly. So I wanted to thank the committee for their work, but also put on the record that I think we absolutely do have some more work to give some of the much needed support to the Department of Human Services so they can do a lot of the important work that they do for these programs and other critical needs of folks in our city. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 2nd.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, will the Alderman from the 14th yield for a question, please?
The Alderman from the 14th yields questioning from the Alderman from the 2nd.
Yes.
Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. Alderman, you mentioned that this $1 million, the previous assumption was that it was going to be, the particular use was going to be included in the original $30 million that we quickly and swiftly moved toward tornado relief out of interest. This is outside of that, but I don't know, and I should know the answer to this, but you're bringing this forward. Do we know what the current balance is on the interest and or the principal of the RAMS proceeds?
Off the top of my head, I don't know the correct balance of interest. I want to say maybe we have $5 million, but I don't know it directly, so I don't want to throw out any number. $4 million is in interest, and I think we maybe have 200 and something in the principal, close to 50, 80, but I don't have the direct number. I do know that there's enough in the interest
for
fund.
both this and the approximately 3.4 million.
Yeah, for the next bill that we
Okay.
that comes up, that there's enough funds for.
I'm sure I can get that pretty quickly from the treasurer. I think it would be important as we start to what feels like making shifts towards utilizing the interest associated with these proceeds, which I don't disagree with in spirit. I think it's good governing, and it's a way to keep the principle intact and lasting. And the longer we can keep the principle untapped, I think it is the better. But I do think if we're going to continue utilizing the interest in any capacity, that the board bill should carry what those balances are constantly, and it maybe just as an exhibit or a footnote would be a good idea.
Yeah. What I could do, Alderman, before, since the exhibit doesn't change the scope of the board bill, I can make sure next week I'll have an exhibit attached of how much is in interest and how much is in the principal. I'll reach out to the treasurer to try to get those numbers possible for you.
See, you're a giver. I appreciate that. I have nothing further.
Anything from my bud.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Alderman from the 14th, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Madam President. I close on Board Bill 93.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we perfect Board Bill number 93. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Board Bill 94, sponsored by Alderwoman Sanye, Mayor Spencer, President Green, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Alderman Aldridge, Alderwoman Keys, Alderman Devotie, and Alderman Browning. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment appropriating the sum of $3,365,535.05 of the RAM Settlement Fund for the purpose of supporting winter shelter needs for unhoused residents, authorizing and directing the Director of the Department of Human Services to execute or purchase against existing contracts as may be necessary to expend funds containing a severability and an emergency clause.
Alderwoman from the 7th, you're recognized on the perfection of Board Bill 94.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to make a motion to perfect Board Bill 94.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 11th, that we perfect Board Bill 94. Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I want to thank all the folks who came out to committee that we came to committee that we had this week to speak about some of the needs here. I want to definitely give a big gratitude to many of the providers and of care and the many volunteers who are grouping up to get ready to do this work. I actually had an opportunity to attend St. Louis Winter Outreach Training this past Saturday with Alderwoman Boyd, which was an excellent experience. I think we all are familiar with the issues that we face every winter. I don't think I need to go into depth that, the purpose of this bill is to prevent any human being from freezing in the cold this winter. I won't belabor the point. But this is hopefully to provide capacity to support staffing, operational expenses, to provide transportation for folks to shelters, to provide, funds to set up those sorts of infrastructure. And again, I know there are many folks who are watching and many folks in the gallery who are the volunteers and the residents of the city of St. Louis who really provide this infrastructure, often with very little support from the city. And so I think this is a great proactive move on our behalf to get these funds moving. And then I also just wanted to note to a previous question that was raised earlier that the balances for the RAM settlement, there is mention of that in the whereas clauses of these bills. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none. Oh, sorry, Alderwoman Boyd, Alderwoman from the 13th.
Thank you, Madam President. Would the resident, would the alderperson from the 7th be open for a question?
Absolutely.
Would the Alderwoman from the 7th yield to questioning from the Alderwoman from the 13th?
Absolutely.
Alderwoman from the 13th, you may proceed.
Thank you, Alderwoman Sonia. So you and I have been really pushing for this. My question is, and my fear is, the money getting on the street. And so, do we know how long it's going to take to move these dollars to get them out because the winter is here. We're already up on winter. So I think that's my biggest fear. And we had that conversation. So do we have a timeline or when this can start moving? Because I'm getting calls also from organization that said no money is on the streets. So do you have approximate time frame?
Yes, ma'am. First, I just want to thank you, Alderwoman Boyd, for much of your help of having these conversations, uplifting this issue. I really want to make sure I put that on record. And absolutely, I share your concerns for a timeline. I have not gotten an exact timeline, but I do know that Dr. Pearson indicated that as soon as the pen is put on this legislation and is signed, he's hoping to be ready to, within these pieces of bills, there's the emergency procurement process. And so they're hoping to be ready to release those RFPs, requests for proposals, and put those funds out as soon as the mayor signs this bill. And that's a part of us moving to perfect the bill today so that we can move that fast. And I would say all that to say with the honest caveat that obviously our procurement processes are moving slow. And then I would say the other thing that I think to pay attention to is a lot of the money that's moving. The other bills are going to the Office of Recovery. This bill is going to the Department of Human Services, and that's with hopes that they're not moving, they're not the office that's responsible for moving the $30 million that was allocated. And so that's with hope that they will be able to get these focused solely on these funds and get them out the door as quick as possible. I don't have a firm commitment. I'm happy to send an email and see if we could get firm commitment, but I will also say I think part of the diligence will be on us as alders to make sure that we're having those conversations on record and actively tracking if the money is moving and creating spaces for the organizations on the ground to let us know and speak publicly about where it is.
Okay, thank you so much.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, Alderwoman from the 7th, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Again, I just really give a big shout out to really the blood of this bill, which is really community residents who I know are going to be really responsible for putting these efforts up and supporting these investments. I know that this is a very frustrating process. We know that this winter is going to be even more difficult, the ones we had in the past, but I certainly do hope that what you all see today from this board and this body is just a true intention to want to move as fast and be as supportive as we can in your efforts.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 11th, that we perfect Board Bill number 94. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Board Bill 95, sponsored by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, Mayor Spencer, President Green, Alderwoman Keys, Alderwoman Sanier, Alderman Aldridge, Alderman Devotie, and Alderman Browning. An ordinance recommended by the Board of Estimate and Apportionment appropriating a sum of $9,350,000 of a one-time unreserved general operating reserve funds for deposit into the Tornado Relief and Recovery Fund for the purpose of supporting winter-related emergency shelters and additional tornado disaster relief to support housing of residents impacted by the May 16, 2025 tornado, containing a severability and an emergency clause.
Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized on the perfection of Board Bill 95.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we perfect Board Bill 95.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we perfect Board Bill number 95. Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, before I open myself up for questions from any of my colleagues, I hit a few points that I know probably the money man in the room might ask where these one-time unrestricted funds came from our general operating budget. They are half of last year's operating surplus that came directly from our budget director, Paul Payne, so that you know where those came from. Also wanted to reference and highlight that not only does this support emergency sheltering, but also additional disaster relief to support housing of residents impacted by May 16th. And I'll tell you why I'm highlighting that, because once again, this morning on the news, I heard mention of this mass shelter. And I want to highlight that in committee, not only did myself, my colleagues, Director Pearson, the mayor's administration, nobody spoke about wanting to form and use this funding for a mass shelter, 1,000-bed shelter, all of the narratives that are going around. This highlighted and gives us the opportunity to not only rehouse, but deploy these funds to existing eligible contractors that can get them to Alderman Boyd's point on the ground to these people that need housing, like the examples that you heard me and Alderwoman Keys uplift today. So again, I want to make sure I reference in talking about transparency and talking about we have a responsibility to hold things accountable, like Alderwoman they said, we have to use our platforms to make sure we control this narrative. We are down here to want to help support the people that are doing this work already in the city. Please don't ever feel like you're being taken for granted or that we don't listen, see, or hear and know the work that you're doing on the ground. So when we have opportunities to legislate, which is our role, then we legislate and move forward and then advocate for you. So just making sure that that's highlighted for the media, for the people in the room, for the people listening. Nobody wants to house and hoard our people. We want to help our people get through this winter season so that they can make the steps to get through their full restoration and recovery here and continue to stay in the city of St. Louis. So with that, I will be available for any questions you may have on Board Bill 95.
Alderman from the 2nd. And then I'll
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I certainly rise in support of this. I just wanted to make a couple of statements to bring the importance of tapping the reserve, the city's reserve, into frame here. I think with the budget office and past administrations' concerted efforts since the Great Recession to really bolster back up our reserves, they had been depleted significantly. And they are there for emergency situations and disruptions like we saw with tornado. So I do caveat that I think this is an appropriate use or tap of the reserves, but I just do want to also have a call to action that we need to be very careful when we do, in fact, tap our city's reserves. The good news here is I think we had about $154 million in our reserves, which is about 25% of the operating funds that we need and can cover more than 2 months of operating expenses. The city had no revenue coming in. That's sort of the general guideline from, I think, the Government Finance Office of Associations. So this dip, while important and needed, I do just want to stress that it does still keep us above the general minimum requirement of that office, and keeping our reserves strong is very important. But to close by saying that this is an important and type of use that you do, in fact, tap the city's reserves prudently. So I want to thank the Alderwoman from the 10th for carrying this measure, and I have nothing further.
Alderwoman from the 8th. That mic does not like you today.
Every day. Thank you, Madam President. I just want to rise again and state my continued support for this series of bills, as well as thank the Budget Committee for the work on it. I do have one question from the Alderwoman for the 10th, because I think it's important. Oh, Alderwoman, would you yield for question?
Would the Alderwoman from the 10th yield to questioning from the Alderwoman?
Absolutely.
Alderwoman from the 8th, you may proceed.
Thank you, Alderwoman. I do just have one question, and I think it speaks to the Alderwoman from the 13th question about the necessity to make sure these funds are deployed very quickly. I know a lot of us do have support organizations and boots on the ground organizations maybe in our ward that may be seeking these funds to be able to do the work that they're wanting to do to help support the residents that are unhoused in the community. So can you just speak to, one, why it is necessary for us to have two different sources of revenue going to this purpose of supporting renter shelters, and potentially what these dollars that we're going to be pulling for may be used for?
Great question. One, I'll speak to the different sources, and I say that they even 2, 3, 4, 5 are not for the need. So when you see us pulling from wherever we can, I know work was done by Alderwoman Sanye and the mayor's administration just to see where we could pull from exactly what we needed, as much as we needed to try to fill in this gap that's still there. And what was also mentioned in committee was that special meetings, the fact that these contracts, a lot of them, to your point, providers that have already gone through procurement, have already gone validation and all of that to make sure that they've already been working to do the work can access these freely and funding and not have to go through applying for an RFP, not have to go through the procurement of the processes. Us having special meetings and moving things the way we're doing, all of these are the steps that we can take in this very bureaucratic process. Full of red tape, we know that, but we are doing our part down here to remove some of the red tape that we can to work to get this money on the ground as quickly as possible. Listen, if we wouldn't have done these steps, we would have still been talking about it. If the conversations that they had, if the conversations with our budget director, Paul Payne, wasn't on the table so that he could identify this one-time reserve money funding, we could, all of these conversations having in the sense of urgency that they are now, while we know from our providers that it wasn't urgent enough, we are now doing our part to get it on the ground. So now we have to follow it and track it, right? This is our part of our role in the process. And I think that us working down here together sends the message rather that we are for it, and then we can now advocate to make sure that they get it. So I hope that answered your question. But other than that, you know, what we can say is if we see there's a stopgap somewhere and we have identified those, then we call it to the table immediately. Then we use our friends in the media. Then we use our friends in community and public and the providers and on the ground. And most importantly, our unhoused neighbors, our constituents that are living this, to uplift and push people forward. We know that's how, unfortunately, not just in our city government, but in other governments, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, and right now this is absolutely the squeaky wheel.
Thank you, Alderwoman. That definitely answers my question. And I do just think it's important for any providers that are watching, that are waiting for these funds, to know that that's why we're doing it, and that's how we're working quickly to make sure that we can get access to people as possible. So thank you for that.
Alderwoman from the 7th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I just wanted to add some additional context to what the Alderwoman from the 10th said as far as what these funds can be used for in Board Bill 95. Some of them can be used for rental assistance and deposits for people who need to, you know, relocate really quickly. Some of it can be used for home repair. Obviously, the tornado completely devastated and ruined homes. Some of the funds can be used for vacant turnovers. So there's a program being run out of CDA right now where they're trying to quickly activate housing that doesn't need that much work so that folks can move into it. And then also some of the funds can be used for legal services and staffing capacity and case management, because obviously you have residents who have lost everything, so they might need case management to help them with food access, to help them with utility assistance, to help them with whatever they need. And so those are some of the eligible uses within Board Bill 95. And I just think that's important to have on the record so that folks could kind of understand the difference between the different pieces of legislation we're discussing here. Alderwoman Shameen Clark-Hubbard's bill is really focused on specifically tornado victims and their needs, which are a bit different from those who are already been a part of our unhoused community. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized to close.
I renew my motion.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we perfect Board Bill number 95. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
That's the extent of board bills for perfection.
Report of engrossment.
Board Bill 89.
Third reading and final passage of board bills consent.
Board Bill 89.
Alderwoman from the 10th, you are recognized on the motion to adopt the third reading and final passage of board bills on the consent calendar.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we adopt the third reading and final passage of board bills on the consent calendar.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt the third reading and final passage of board bills on the consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Devoti. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Sanye. Alderman Cox Antwi. Alderman Browning. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd. Alderman Aldridge. President Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Cone. Alderwoman Velazquez. Alderwoman Tyus. Alderwoman Boyd. 11 aye votes.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the Alderwoman from the 10th to third read and finally pass the aforementioned bills. Third reading and final passage of board bills.
We have none.
We can dispense with line item 20, reported the finally passed and signed by the President.
Board Bill 89.
All other business being suspended, the President shall in open session affix her signature hereto and that these may become law. First reading resolutions in reference to committees.
Resolution 144, sponsored by Alderwoman Velazquez, approve the 2026 Tower Grove Concerned Citizen Special Business District budget.
Aldermen from the 14th, are you handling this? Okay. Alderman from the 14th, you're recognized on the first reading resolution 144.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, I ask for unanimous consent on Resolution 144.
Hearing no objection, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, standing in the gap for the Alderwoman from the 6th, Resolution 144 is the annual approval of 2026 Tower Grove Concerned Citizen Special Business District. This is something we've passed last year. Again, this is just them submitting their annual budget, which is in the drive for us all to see. And with that, I would ask for the approval of Resolution Perfection of 144 unless people have questions. Adoption of 144 unless people have questions outside of people.
There a second? It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt resolution number 144. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Resolution 147, sponsored by Alderwoman Sanye and President Green, supporting unionization efforts by county employees.
Alderwoman from the 7th, you are recognized on the first reading resolution 147.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I would like to ask for unanimous consent for Resolution 47.
Hearing no objection, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. We had an incredible rally on Wednesday, and there are some employees that are in the gallery with us today, as well as some of the union representatives. I don't want us to complicate what this resolution is doing or asking for. It is really asking just for 4 simple, basic things. To affirm the workers' right to unionize, which I strongly believe unequivocally is a right, to remain neutral throughout their organizing process, to voluntarily recognize the union, and the majority of them do collect their cards, and then to negotiate in good faith, which we all know are the 4 basic premises of the employees. When I went to the rally, for me, what was really heartening was just to hear all of these different direct experiences from the employees who have been experiencing these working conditions and working for a company. I think what's also something worth uplifting is Caldy's did put out an official statement saying that they support the employees' right to unionize, and so we shouldn't have any trouble or any issue with this today. And I definitely just want to take this opportunity on the floor to just acknowledge the deep bravery and courage of those of you all who are unionizing. I know when you start these efforts, I know it's been a long road for you all, and I know when you start these efforts, you don't know what the risks are, and the risk is your livelihood. Obviously, under capitalism, and especially in a time right now where cost, that's risky. And so I just really want to make sure that I feel like I have the easy part standing on the floor done here today. You guys have done and are doing hard work, and I wish you all the best. And my hope is today that all my colleagues can stand with me in supporting their right to unionize.
Thanks. Would you like to make a motion to adopt?
Yes, I would like to make a motion to adopt Resolution 147.
Second.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 11th, that we adopt resolution number 147. Is there any further discussion? Alderman from the, I'll do 4th and then 14th.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the board, I'll keep it brief here. The asks that these workers have are really simple. They're asking for a safer workplace and to be treated with basic dignity. And that's not too much for anyone to ask. with that, I would move that we move this resolution forward in bank.
Second.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 4th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 11th, that we make Resolution 147 in bank. Is there any discussion on the motion to bank? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Resolution 147 is in bank, which means that every member of the Board of Aldermen has signed on as a co-sponsor of the resolution and support. Any further discussion? Alderman from the 14th, and then I'll go to the 2nd.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I just want to also stand in solidarity, not only with Unite Here, but the workers that, as the Alderwoman from the 7th, are taking a courageous step in speaking up and stepping out and trying to organize for fair dignity on the workplace and a livable wage. And it is not an easy thing to do. I've been down that road. It is scary, especially when this is a job that you still rely on for income, for putting food on the table, making sure that you're able to use those funds for detergent. And as things are going up and up, it's only getting more expensive. So I just want you guys to know, as the president said, as we embank this board is sending a message that we stand with you, because when working families are under attack, what do? Stand up like that. When working families are under attack, what do? Stand up like that. And I just want y'all to know we standing up and we fighting back with y'all. Thank you.
Alderman from the 2nd.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Will the Alderman from the 7th please yield?
The Alderwoman from the 7th yields questioning from the Alderman from the 2nd.
Yes.
Alderman, you may proceed.
Alderwoman, congratulations. I think this is an important statement that's being made. But one question I had was, have you or any of the organizers directly engaged with the ownership? I feel it's important to also carry some practicality to this so that people don't wake up, read the newspaper tomorrow and think, oh, Caldy's is organized now. I know it's a lot of work. I know statements like this, I assume, can be helpful, and that's great. Gives everyone a good shot in the arm and maybe a self-esteem boost. But I'm just curious if you or anyone has directly engaged with ownership of Caldy's to this end.
Thank you, Alderman. I have had a conversation just to make sure that they were aware that there was a plan to move this resolution, as well as a conversation with the Alderman of the 9th and the Alderwoman of the 10th, because a lot of the Caldy's are within their wards. But I want to be clear that it was just a conversation to inform them that I would be moving this resolution forward. When workers are organizing and setting up their union, they're actually not charged during that process to have communication with the ownership just yet. That ownership and that communication starts once they get their cards collected and officially, begin their unionization process. So, of course, we wouldn't want to ask them to do anything that would, thwart or their efforts. But again, I also would say that if you just go and do a Google search, you'll see that Caldy's put out a statement right after our press conference.
No, you didn't meet with them. No, you didn't meet with them before the protest.
I sent them notification, just make sure they were aware.
That's not a meeting, but it's a real simple question. Did you meet with them?
I sent them notification.
Okay. No further questions. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Alderwoman from the 7th, you are recognized to close.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I'm just excited, and I want you all to know that I know you are about to begin your process with the ownership. I've actually seen some positive communication from Caldy's. I've seen nothing from them indicating that they plan step in the way of you all at all, of your efforts. And so I know that's actually the next step of this process, and I just hope you all know that you're very supported in your efforts. And again, a big shout out to your courage and bravery for taking this step.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 7th, seconded by the Woman from the 11th, that we adopt Resolution 147. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
That's the extent of first reading of resolutions in reference to committees.
Second reading resolutions, committee reports, and adoption.
Resolution 136, sponsored by Alderman Aldridge, President Green, Alderman Cone, Alderwoman Sanye, and Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, ensuring ethical investment of city retirement funds.
Alderman from the 14th, you are recognized on the second reading of Resolution 136.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move to adopt Resolution 136.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 7th, that we adopt Resolution 136. Alderman, you may proceed.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. First off, I want to thank Not Another Nickel campaign. We had a very long budget hearing on this resolution just this past week. It was so much passion and so much energy around this resolution. We had to, kind of slow down testimony, something that is not typically done at the Board of Aldermen. We are here to always hear from people, but they packed the room, they organized, and this resolution is really, from us as the Board of Aldermen, sending a message that we're saying that we want ethical investment in our portfolio when it comes to investment. We want to make sure this Board of Aldermen has, as people say, the young folks say, have already stood on business. We're passing a ceasefire down here at the Board of Aldermen, and this is just another step saying that we want to make sure that our tax dollars are going to companies that are going to be not engaging in war, but engaging in peace. And again, I would encourage all my colleagues to please go back and watch the hearing. Some of the personal stories that was told, I think speaks to the energy that is needed to get this across the finish line. Note this is a resolution, but I think it continues to show that St. Louis stands steadfast and ready to stand on the right side of history and not on the wrong side of history. And I appreciate my colleagues who have signed on as a co-sponsor. I appreciate Alderman Browning, who also was part of some adding language in this resolution. And I would just hope that my colleagues would support this resolution as it is another progress from the city of St. Louis saying we stand with the people, we stand with humanity, and we stand with peace. And with that, I will open up for any questions from my colleagues.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, Alderman from the 14th, you are recognized to close. Oh,
Point of order.
sorry, Alderwoman from the 12th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. If the Alderman from the 14th would yield.
Would the Alderman from the 14th yield to questioning from the Alderwoman from the 12th?
Absolutely.
Alderwoman, you may proceed.
Okay, so thank you. First of all, wanted to know, so I see here that your resolution says that the Board of Trustees of the Employees Retirement System is the only, entity within the city of St. Louis that does not meet the criteria for ethical investment. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. As we've done some research, we have found about 17 companies that from the local campaign would say is not ethical and things that have been going on.
So have you met with the retirement board?
I have talked to the city councilor of the retirement board that wanted to be aware of what this resolution was about, and I explained with him. So yes, we talked this week. Not the full board, the councilor.
Talk to for the board. I'm sorry. Could you hear me?
No, what was your question?
I said, so you talked to the attorney that represents the board. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so what you are looking for with this resolution is you want to not invest in people who create war or weapons of mass destruction or war items. Is that it?
That is correct. And out of those 17, we're talking about the full investment portfolio of the city of St. Louis. Those 17 companies only add up about 1% of the total investment of the city of St. Louis.
Okay, I understand that. So what do we do about our companies that are here in the city of St. Louis that may be producing those types of weapons of, I just keep wanting to say weapons of mass destruction because George Bush told us that certain country had it that didn't. But what do we do about the people who work for these places that they make their livelihood about that and that they have their retirement included with that?
So this is again, this is just an ask to stop investing in those companies. You know, we're not saying that these companies shouldn't exist or that they won't continue to make profit off of mass destruction of war or the genocide that we have seen continue to happen based off some of the companies over in Palestine. You know, that I think is a different question. Learning from the apartheid movement, what we've seen when you disinvest in those companies, there could be a reaction, but the reality of this investment that the city's doing, we're not talking about what the county may be doing with these companies, is literally only 1% of the investment.
That's not my question. So I grew up in Decatur, Illinois, and several of the places there, people make not necessarily weapons of mass destruction, but we had 20-something factories, and part of them made ammunition and things like that. Would that be included?
If it is being used in war, we're asking for the city of St. Louis not to invest in those companies.
Okay, so you will find that in working class communities, a lot of people make their living off of that. And it's not necessarily just to be in an illegal war. What about legal wars? What about self-protection? So if you're making weapons, the thing is that you don't always get to be the aggressor, because sometimes you have to defend yourself. And they had many world wars way before your time, even before mine, in which people went to war to defend democracy and the right of freedom. So what do we do about that?
Well, right now we're talking about what is currently happening with the war that is taking place, as far as literally a genocide, and how that some of the companies that we invest in are sending bombs and planes and murdering mass individuals in areas. So we're talking about right now we're not being attacked. We are the attackers on a mass of individuals who live and represent in our community.
Are we the attackers, or are we supporting somebody who is doing the attack?
I would say if we aid in the attackers, if you are part of being an attacker.
Well, then you have to go back to the whole history of how Israel was created, and talk about who set up the whole thing of where it would be the homeland. Okay, so you have to go into some history that's not very pretty for the United States. Same thing if you ever look at the continent of Africa, and you look at old maps in which the colonists, including the United States, Spain, France, England, they divided up the continent, and it wasn't for Africans, it was for all the other people. And to this day, we have people who are paying France because they broke and got their freedom. So if we're going to talk to this, I don't know how we get out of this quandary. And I guess I just don't want to, I didn't like when the protesters came down, we were over in the Kennedy room, and disrupted our meeting. And I think they're trying to, I don't want to be drugged into the Palestinian war with Israel. I don't want to be in that. And when I have conversations about that, one of the things that I always talk to people and have a conversation about is, while you're talking about the Palestinians, over in my neighborhood, the people who are creating the most terror are the Palestinians who run the gas stations and are having shootings and killings. So it's hard to feel really sad and upset when there is so much force to my community.
Apologies, I'm going to have to ask for quiet in the gallery. Alderwoman from the 12th, you may proceed.
So I don't want to be drugged into that, because I don't think we talking about you're talking about a war, but I feel like there's a war on my corners, that I can't drive up and down my street on Kings Highway, that we're having shootings that have no business having those gas stations there. And the people saying, well, I got to make a living, but you think you have to make a living at the expense of me having to drive through a shooting gallery. So I don't want to be involved in this, because I don't think you can just have one kind of conversation. I most certainly do not think that people should be massacred. In fact, even though I didn't like the people interrupting our meeting, a couple of years ago, I actually hugged one of the people who were crying and got hate mail or emails from some people all the way in New York, because that was in the paper, and they were like, well, you're taking a side. I'm not taking a side. I'm not going to vote for this. I'm going to be a president. I don't want to be drugged in that. And I think if we're going to address violence, we need to address violence at our own corners and who's creating that, and tell the truth and ask, why are people allowed to create violence in my corners, and then demand that I support their right to live. I support their right to live as long as they support my community's right to have a peaceful community that does not include gunfire. I will not be voting for this. I will be voting present. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Alderman from the 5th and then Alderwoman from the 7th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. After that discussion, I feel compelled to rise to explain my vote. I sit on the Budget Committee, and I was present this week or this past Wednesday for the testimony. There is absolutely no doubt that I support wholeheartedly the spirit of this particular resolution, without a doubt. The testimony that we heard over the course of an hour and a half was moving, without a doubt. My heart goes out. My emotional side stands wholeheartedly behind the spirit of this particular resolution. But, and I think this is an important but, the resolution, I believe, also stands as a statement of the board with respect, in this case, to how a particular entity, a retirement fund, should act, must act. And my issue at this point has nothing to do with the spirit of this resolution or the how I feel in connection with what I heard this past Wednesday evening or afternoon, but rather with my concern that we're providing direction to another entity within the city without full education and understanding as to whether this direction is feasible, whether it's possible. This is an issue that I have discussed with the resolution sponsor. And I think one thing that we are missing at this point is an answer to the very simple question, whether it comes from the plan itself, the director, the comptroller, the treasurer, whomever it might be, is the direction this board passing or providing by passing this resolution, is it feasible? Can it be done? Whether it's 1%, 11%, 51%. I think it's a very important piece of information. Is the direction we are doing today feasible? I've asked for that. I still don't have an answer to that question. I will be voting no on this, and I have told the resolution sponsor that. Again, I want to make crystal clear it has nothing to do with what I heard on Wednesday. It has nothing to do with whether I stand in spirit behind the folks in the gallery today and what they have felt and what their family members have felt. But I do think it's very important to have an answer to the question of, is this feasible? And we haven't heard from the experts in this case. So I wish you good luck, but I will be a no vote on this.
Alderwoman from the 7th.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I just wanted to, make sure that I put on the record for me. One of the things that I love most about our city is that we have residents who really care about humanity and really care about people. And I would hope that if someone was blowing up our hospitals and blowing up our places of worship and blowing up our schools, children were dying en masse and losing their parents, that there would be people in other places that would speak up to simply say that that's atrocity, wherever it happens and however it happens, that we think that we can do better as human beings to each other. And so I want to make sure that as people talk about, feasibility and spirit and all these other things, from my understanding, that is the goal of this resolution, is we want to say as human beings that we don't want other human beings to be treated this way. And so I just want to make sure that I go on the record to thank you all for that, to say that I 100% share that sentiment. And obviously there have been other movements. The apartheid movement is a great example where when that started, people started having these divestment conversations. And they thought that there wasn't a pathway forward, and Nelson Mandela was even in jail. And then, what do you know? A lot of places across the country actually did divest. And so I wanted to make sure that I just really spoke to the heart of this resolution. It was very difficult and heartbreaking in committee to hear story after story after story after story of direct references We even had a 12-year-old Palestinian girl come to committee and speak in front of us and to say, listen, I just want you guys to acknowledge that nobody should be dealing with this, that just like I'm able to go to school and drink water and be with my family and have a chance to grow and have a quality life, so should every other child in our country and all across the world. And so it's my hope that the spirit of that stays alive today. I want to thank you all for your efforts. And even when it gets difficult, even when it gets challenging, even when it's not politically popular, I hope that you keep this spirit alive, because if we let our sense of humanity and a care for our neighbors and a general universal standard of how we should treat each other as human beings, then the atrocities and the genocides will continue, and I do not want to see that. So thank you so much, and I'm so glad to be a co-sponsor on this resolution.
Alderwoman from the 12th.
I'm sorry, I thought I saw the other one from the 13th hand. I don't know if she made a mistake, because I have spoken already.
No, you could go ahead, Alderwoman Tyus.
Thank you. So thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I don't challenge that the sponsor from the 14th has the right to bring the resolution. I went through a time when we didn't go to Shell gas stations, and I still don't to this day because of apartheid in South Africa. And so I supported that. So I believe that you can ask any kind of board not to invest. That's not the problem I have at all. So I want to make that clear. I do think you have a full right and you should push forward with that. I just disagree with a group of people who tell me, hear my pain, but don't hear mine. I can tell you all kinds of stories about North St. Louis and the things that get pushed into North St. Louis and the pain of driving down the street and having gunfire come time and time and again from these gas stations, and yet we're still pushing them into our community. And this is from the same group of people who say, hear my pain. If you want me to hear your pain, then I want you to call out and close down those gas stations that are selling liquor, that are creating crime in my neighborhood. That's what I'm saying. I have empathy for you and your community, but you don't get to come to America and come to my corner and cause pain. That is what I'm telling you. Now, you may not want to hear it, but you better not go into the barbershops and the beauty shops or the people that I meet with all the time, because that's what I hear. And I even hear it from, because we had a big gunfire shots rang out at St. Louis Avenue and Kings Highway with a gas station that somebody who pushed it and said, oh, this is going to be great, is now calling me, kicking me in my behind, saying everything you said was true, and all the people who said it. So you cannot ask me to hear your pain, because each time you do, I'm going to say, hear my pain in the country that I was born in, right down the street from my house, that I cannot drive Kings Highway from St. Louis Avenue to Martin Luther King for gunfire from the very people who are telling me they don't want gunfire in their community. I don't want it either. And I don't want to hear you have to earn a living at the expense of my community. I'm not going to vote no, because I do understand that we should not be killing babies. We should not be blowing up hospitals. We should not be doing anything. And we should not let people establish irresponsible businesses on the corners of Black neighborhoods while you're closing them in downtown. You're closing them over on Shoto. You're closing them all. You don't let them come in South St. Louis. You push them under the Slay administration into my community, and it is violent and it is awful. And just like you don't like it, I don't like it. But I don't like your babies being killed, or your mamas and your daddies. So I do have a spirit of understanding, but I don't believe that you should be able to ask me to do something without me saying, and you first, you go back there and tell all those people to close them dangerous gas stations. They're coming from your people, and that you ought to be ashamed of yourself, and they ought to be ashamed of themselves. So I'm voting present. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, Alderman from the 14th, you are recognized to close.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. First, I want to go on record and be clear that hatred and the comments of that Trumpism and us versus them, everybody at the board don't feel that way. We continue to be divisive when we say us versus them, or these gas stations, those people. I work with plenty of people that run gas that do not look like me, that have been a big help to the ward. So that ignorant ignorance of the comment that we heard about born in America. It's a lot of Palestinians that are born in America. And if we continue, because let's not act like, we didn't go through our own fight in slavery, and then just to oppress another community doesn't make us no better when we put oppression on top of other people. So all of that, honestly, nonsense. That's why we have elections that come up, and I hope clips like that get rolled back to hold people accountable, because that's the type of rhetoric, that's the type of Trumpism, that's the type of hatred, that's the type of nothing that is needed down here at the Board of Aldermen. We can have an educational debate or conversation of what you do not believe when it comes to Resolution 136.
Alderwoman from the 12th.
If you let him keep saying that, I'm going to talk about the ignorance and lies that he's telling. So I would tell
Alderwoman, you must state your point of order.
Now what? And my point of order is he is making an attack.
That's not a rule.
That's not a point of order.
That little liar.
Alderman, if you could please state germane to the
I will state
resolution,
germane
and
resolution
please mute
136.
the Alderwoman from the 12th as she is not recognized.
Thank you guys again to the activists or the organizers for Not Another Nickel campaign that talks about the divestment and why we need to divest, and just stand for humanity. It's that simple. It's not a us versus them. It is all of us coming together and saying that we send a strong message that we want peace, that we want humanity, regardless of your skin tone, that we all should be in this fight together. I just want to, again, I know this is an issue that, that's why I purposely, from my colleagues, and I appreciate plenty of the conversation that I had with my colleagues, try to not make it about one side or the other. There's no language in there that says Israel, Palestine, but just talking about the core of investment in companies that are not ethically and doing the right thing in our city of St. Louis, and us taking a stance. I also appreciate the alderman from the 5th with coming to me early about his concerns if we are able to do this from the retirement board. I think there will always be questions on many legislations that come from the Board of Aldermen, but I think at least what it does is it sends a message of solidarity and support. And with that, Madam President, members of the board, I would close.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 14th, seconded by the Alderperson from the 7th, that we adopt Resolution 136. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Cone. Alderman Narayan. Alderman Devoti.
No.
Alderwoman Velazquez.
Aye.
Alderwoman Sanye.
Aye.
Alderwoman Cox Antwi.
Aye.
Alderman Browning.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard. Alderwoman Keys. Alderwoman Tyus.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Present.
Alderman Aldridge.
Aye.
President Green.
Aye.
Alderwoman Schweitzer. 10 aye votes, 1 no vote, and 3 voted present.
By your vote, you sustain the motion from the Alderman from the 14th to adopt Resolution 136. Miscellaneous and unfinished business.
We have none.
Dispense with line item 25, announcements.
Tuesday, November 11th, the Board of Aldermen office will be closed in honor of Veterans Day. Wednesday, November 12th, Public Infrastructure and Utilities will have a committee hearing in the Kennedy Room at 3:30 p.m. Thursday, November 13th, Health and Human Development will have a committee hearing via webinar at 9 a.m. Personnel and Administration will have a committee hearing in the Kennedy Room at 11 a.m. Public Safety in the Kennedy Room at 2 p.m. Friday, November 14th, full board meeting in the chambers at 10 a.m. That's the extent of the announcements.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderwoman from the 7th.
I I just want to make sure I lift up that the HUD's committee that we have on the 19th coming up, that is going to discuss right to counsel. Alderwoman, Chairwoman Shameen Clark-Hubbard scheduled that. I know it was kind of mentioned today. We had some people mentioned in committee, so I just want to make sure I state over and over again that at 6 o'clock, Legal Eastern Services Missouri, as well as some of the other partners on right to counsel and community members will be there to discuss it on November 19th.
Any further announcements? Alderwoman from the 7th.
Sorry, also Jazz Crawl tomorrow on Cherokee Street begins. The parade will begin at about 10 a.m. We'll have activities all day. So if you're looking to just have some fun, hear some good live music, get yourself some good food, I hope to see you at Cherokee Jazz Crawl tomorrow. Thank you.
Need further announcements? I do want to make sure that I uplift that because the office is closed on Tuesday for the Veterans Day holiday, board bills must be filed by noon on Monday instead of noon on Tuesday if you want them introduced on Friday. So please get them in by noon on Monday. With that, Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized on the motion to excuse.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. All members were present this.
Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized
I
on the
cannot forget our Alder Mommy. I would like to excuse, thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we excuse our Alder Mommy from the 1st for necessary, very necessary absence.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderperson from the 7th, that we excuse the Alderperson from the 1st for necessary absence. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Alderwoman from the 10th, you're recognized on the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I move that we adjourn till Friday, November 14th, 2025, in the Board of Aldermen chambers at 10.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderman from the 3rd, that we adjourn until Friday, November 14th, 2025, in the Board of Aldermen chambers at 10 a.m. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned.